Now, we're a nation of tea drinkers, of course we are. But the Brits, we also like our coffee. In fact, we're said to drink around 95 million cups of the good stuff every single day, and it's a lucrative market, with the coffee industry as a whole contributing billions of pounds to the British economy each year. Now, one person who knows the industry pretty well is David Abrahamovitch, who in 2011 founded the coffee company Grind. And over the last decade, his business has been percolating nicely, operating in several London locations and launching single-use pods for Nespresso machines. But David's latest mission is perhaps his most ambitious. He's created a new compostable coffee pod, not a word I say often, that can be put straight onto the compost heap or into the food bin. And here to tell us more, it's David Abrahamovitch, CEO and founder of Grind. Great to have you in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
David, you must really like coffee.
I do really like coffee. I drink a lot of it. I have to try and limit how much I drink, in fact, because it's around me constantly everywhere I go.
And here we are. We've got some grind coffee here. So
cheers.
Nice to see you.
You too.
I do think we're drinking a lot more coffee. We are traditionally a nation of tea drinkers, but just the proliferation of coffee shops on the high street and so on. What is the real vision of your business? What made you think in 2011 you could start a coffee company? What were you adding?
So we were born in Shoreditch in East London in 2011, just before the Olympics, just as flat white culture was really starting to arrive in the UK. And, you know, I think we've been a part of that movement generally as people look for a more differentiated, more premium product, basically. And, you know, coffee is just a huge important part of life now. Like, it's such a ritual. You know, how many times we say, let's meet for a coffee? And you know, it's a really important part of culture, particularly where we started in Shoreditch in East London, you know, Silicon Roundabout, you know, lots of tech businesses, lots of creatives. The whole thing is kind of fueled on coffee, and we've had a good time being a part of it. So
tell us about your new compostable coffee pods.
Yeah, so we started making compostable coffee pods in about 2019, just before the first lockdown, and you know, it was a small side project at the time. Then obviously we were forced to close all of our central London locations. We were forced to close all of our locations, and fortunately this side of the business really exploded and you know, kept us going and has now actually become the future of the business. And we've just launched the latest version, which
is compostable.
Yeah, so this is actually home compostable. So the previous ones were compostable, but they required industrial facilities, which maybe not every council had. You know, lots of people, when you talk to them, they're a bit confused about home, not. These are home compostable, so they'll break down in 180 days.
I should tell viewers and listeners, it looks like any other coffee pod.
Yeah.
This one's for the Nespresso brand. Other coffee pod machines are available, obviously, but it really feels like plastic. It doesn't feel. I'm not saying it isn't, but it doesn't feel compostable. I thought it would be sort of floppy and sort of spongy.
That's been the problem,
and that would be hard to use in the machine.
Exactly. So that's been the problem. So people have tried, but exactly that. They end up floppy. They absorb water, and they don't do the job, which is to keep the coffee fresh and then have water pumped through it to extract this. So, you know, these are made from PHA, which is... it's made from a process called microbacterial fermentation. Woo! Don't ask me any more about it, because it gets very complicated. But what that gives you is a product that has all the properties of plastic. You know, plastic's great. It's light, it's cheap, it's fast to produce, but it doesn't decompose, and that's the problem with
loads of it floating in the sea.
Exactly, and that's the big problem with single-use plastic. So this is a material which gives you those great properties of plastic, but then in 180 days in your compost, even in marine sediment, should they, unfortunately, which we would obviously not encourage, but find their way into the ocean, and they will eventually decompose there as well. So, you know, it's important to keep moving this stuff forward.
Right, I'm going to take you on here. I am a bit of a coffee snob. I don't use coffee pods because I like to get my own coffee and maybe mix it up. And I use one of those old Italian Bialetti things.
Stovetop.
Yeah, a stovetop thing. It's just a habit I've got into over the years. But I do really understand and appreciate the convenience of coffee pods.
That's it, right? Look, we roast whole bean and ground coffee in Bermondsey, which we supply all of our cafes and then hotels and members clubs like Soho House around the world. So we love that as well. You can't beat one of these for for what the quality that you get out, for the effort that you put in and the speed, you can't beat these.
Yeah.
You know, put it in, press a button, and I'm gone. Now listen, I do both at home. Monday to Friday, I make these when I've got no time. On a Sunday morning, got a bit more time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, there's a place for all of it. Enough. But what's good about these as well is they really reduce the amount of coffee you use per serve. So you'll probably waste quite a lot of coffee when you make your stovetop. And if you think about the carbon in the process is actually mainly created at source where it's grown.
You make me feel guilty.
No, I'm not. I'm not here to make you feel guilty.
It's a good point.
Yeah, but you know, if you can just be more accurate in the amount of coffee, then obviously that's a great way to bring the carbon cost down from all of the coffee that's being shipped and handled around the world.
You're obviously running a business that's going places. I mean, the branding, the pink packaging, and so on. I see it in my own kitchen. I see it in friends' kitchens. So you're clearly getting about. But you are importing coffee beans, and you are using. You know, you're using a lot of transport. You're using industrial processes to grind those beans, to put them in the pods, and so on. I'm thinking fuel costs. I'm thinking, you know, import export difficulties.
Yep.
How's it going?
Look, I think, as everyone knows, supply chain has been incredibly challenging the last couple of years. I mean, during the very first lockdown, our demand increased 5,000%, and at the same time, funny that. And at the same time, you know, for love nor money, we could not get stuff off ships. We were actually renting trucks ourselves and going down and like begging people, please give us this container of coffee because we need to roast it and sell it to stay alive because our restaurants are closed. So look, I mean, you know, container prices have gone from, I think, $3,000 up to $20,000 was its peak. Look,
so most of your stuff's coming from where? From Brazil, from West Africa?
From Brazil, Guatemala, Ethiopia, Colombia, Costa Rica, all these kind of places. And yeah, look, it's been challenging. And then, in our central London stores as well, you're seeing, you know, huge cost pressures coming through as well with energy bills through the roof and, you know, the stuff that's well reported. So it's not an easy environment to operate in, that's for sure.
From East London to the world, David Abrahamovitch, great to see you here.
Thank you for having me.
You're the CEO and founder of the coffee company Grind. Really interesting
Thank you.
stuff.